Hi, I'm Heather, Business Development Lead for Co-operatives First. Thanks for tuning in to this Hometown Advantage webinar. This webinar, Remote Workers and COVID-19 Trends Impacting ECDEV, was recorded on June 23rd, 2021. In this webinar, we're going to hear from Jim Dixon, Economic Development Officer for the City of Moose Jaw, and Paul Kelly, Self-Employment Program Manager for Community Future Central Kootenai. We hope you enjoy this webinar, and to sign up for a future webinar, check out cooperativesfirst.com/webinars.
Hi, Jim and Paul. Welcome to the panel. Thank you for joining us. So I think I sent out introductions before, but Paul is from Community Future Central Kootenai, and Jim is from City of Moose Jaw Economic Development. And so I'm so excited that both of them have agreed to be on the panel today to talk about COVID trends and how they're impacting economic development. So what we're going to do is we're going to just jump straight into the panel. Do you want to say hi, Paul and Jim, before I jump into the panel?
Hi.
Okay. Just make sure we can get unmuted. Jim, are you okay for audio?
Should I sing and dance while we're waiting for Jim?
Well, it wouldn't hurt. Jim, do we have your audio? Oh, Jim has left the Zoom meeting, not hearing. We had some Zoom trouble last week. Okay. You know what, not to delay this any further, let's just jump into it. And then I can re-ask the question again, if that's okay. Okay, so we'll just, okay. So again, very grateful that Kyle here is working the Zoom magic. Hi, Jim, are you having audio now?
I am now engaged. Sorry.
Okay. We have audio, we have video, we have panelists. We are here. Okay, excellent. Okay, let's dive into the questions. Okay. Okay, so first I want to talk about the during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, a lot of things had to shift, and they had to shift quickly. A lot of information needed to get shared quickly. And it kind of led to really in the moment changes that were interesting, but might not necessarily be things that will stick around. So I want to talk about specifically related to economic development. What were some responses that you saw in Nelson and Moose Jaw during the pandemic that were kind of related to economic development and that were interesting? Okay, we'll start with Paul.
I think some of the big stuff is just the level of confusion with all of the different government programs being announced at the same time. And so our community futures stepped in right away to try and aggregate a bunch of those different jurisdictional programs that were being offered. So we'd hold a weekly round table for businesses in conjunction with our local chamber. And then on our website, we also hosted all of the different benefits that were available for businesses. And we actually had one of our business advisors available to talk to, so people could just call in, ask the questions they needed, get the answers. And it really helped to dispel a lot of myths, get people pointed in the right direction. And yeah, that was really, really beneficial. We also set up a business Facebook group because it seems to be a really great forum and everyone seems to be on it. And so it was just really easy to disseminate information that way as well. We were also doing the lending through like the RRF, the emergency loans programs through our office. So that was a big piece. So yeah, and I guess renegotiating loans. So, we've got a lot of money out there in the local business community, and definitely we're one of the more compassionate lenders out there, and we were able to create amendments that made things workable for our clients, which I think was really appreciated.
Hey, Jim, I know I've heard about Moose Jaw's think tanks and Ding Dong Ditch Day, and your mayor made some infamous videos. So tell us about Moose.
Yeah, well, a lot along the same lines as Paul's opening comments there was so much confusion, so much information. We really identified a need to get a forum for our business community to be able to, get to. So in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, they created the think tank. And initially we went 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 every morning of those days. And we talked about all the resources out there. There were continual updates on them. We had one individual that kept on top of all that, and he was fantastic resource for the business community. The chamber took a great leadership role. We worked with our other tourism Moose Jaw. We worked with the chamber, our city of Moose Jaw, and several businesses, Wow Factor Media, which are technology, and that's their business, and so that was an important piece that on all of that for sure.
Great. So we're going to just shift gears here. We're just going to kind of shift into a higher gear and keep going. I'm sorry about that analogy. We didn't need it. I used it. I'm sorry. Anyway, all right, this is being recorded. Okay, thanks everyone. So let's keep going. Let's talk about now. That was kind of like during, it was all kind of crazy and things were happening all at once. So now once the kind of dust has settled a little bit and things have started to emerge and change maybe. I mean, I talked about earlier when we met together, it was kind of like someone took a snow globe, shook it, and then put it back down. And then all the pieces were like the little pieces were in different places when we realized actually where everything had fallen. So what are some potential opportunities that you've identified in your work that have come out of all of this sort of reshaping, I guess you could call it. And how do you think those are being captured, both in Nelson and in Moose Jaw? So we can start with Paul again. Nice little flow here.
All right. I think some of the big stuff is anyone who had engaged in prior disaster planning quickly engaged those plans. So Community Futures here, for instance, we had done some disaster preparedness work a couple of years prior. We had gotten everyone on remote workstations. All our files were cloud-based. So when we had to close our office, we were able to go remote right away without any complication, and our staff were used to it. They knew where to find things. And all the businesses we had worked with over the last 2 years as well, having gone through those training programs, they were in pretty good shape too. I think, the people who had been considering flexible work days or work from home days or, working completely 100% remote, they were forced into it. And that was an interesting change. Not having that regular touch base with your team in person anymore, developing your in-home workstation workspaces, that type of thing. Those were some big changes. Our local office supply stores did a rockin' business. They were able to do home delivery of all of the office supplies to get essentially the satellite locations set up for everyone. Our local buy local campaigns really took off. There was always something like we're a very local foods focused community, buy local focused community. But it really took off during the pandemic. Everyone was so eager to support local businesses. We had a bunch of programs launched through Innovate BC to allow businesses to go online. So there was a great uptake of that. So anyone who didn't have an online catalog and online sales platform was able to do that at the province's, on the province's dime, which was pretty great to see. And then all the skill building that happens around that was happening at the same time too. So it was, quite a shift, rapid, needed. Everyone had planned doing it, but maybe hadn't really done it or done the homework to be able to do it. And it really just, pushed that throttle and made everyone jump right in. Outdoor sporting goods. So with all the gyms, yoga studios, all that closing, everyone went out into our outdoor spaces. So hiking, running, mountain biking, road cycling, boating, everything really took off. And this is the place to do all of that. So you can imagine it was a major impact to our local community. And then we've got a bunch of sporting wholesalers here too, whose businesses just went crazy. And so there's actually been a fairly favorable boom in business with the pandemic for people in those sectors.
So yeah, in terms of once we got the kind of 3 phases: reaction, response, and recovery, and so once we got into the response phase, after we kind of realized what's going on, the think tank, the forum itself was amazing for creativity and ideas coming from the business community our various associations. So, a key one was the virtual marketplace, and we actually didn't create that. We saw it down in Belleville, Ontario, and it was an opportunity to help business people, folks get their products online. Many of the folks had never been online; they had no knowledge of how technology works in that space. So we had I mentioned Wow Factor. They stepped up. They're a media company here in Moose Jaw. They trained for free people. We created a virtual marketplace, ended up getting 70, 80 businesses by the end of it online selling their products. So it was really an important piece in terms of educating them on how to do it, but that they could continue, selling and marketing their projects. And as Heather mentioned, the Ding Dong Ditch Day came out of that. I don't even have to explain that. It makes sense. So that was one. And we pop-up patios where we got, going on outside spaces so people could, eat and do their things outside. No business left behind. Facebook, free Facebook advertising for businesses. And, so there were a whole bunch of things that came out of that think tank, which really goes to show you how important collaboration is. And just how important it is to come together, and in a time of need.
Okay, great. So I wanted to talk about opportunities first that had been created. And then the next thing I want to talk about is what are some of the sort of knock on, or maybe we can call them side effects. I mean, just effects that were a surprise or kind of like as a result of something that happened, then something else happened. That's kind of confusing. But what I'm thinking about here is like when we had talked previously, Paul, you had mentioned about, well, suddenly now, housing is tight in an already tight rental market. So what are sort of like, in this when I want to talk a little bit about risk mitigation and planning around risk mitigation around some of those things that have come out through the pandemic. Opportunity is created, but new risks are created. So what are some of the ways you're thinking about those risks and planning for them? And what are some of those sort of extra side effects?
Yeah, so the housing market's a great example. So because people have bought a lot of retirement homes or vacation homes that they plan to move into when they retired. And the pandemic basically forced their hand. They moved, they retired, they landed here, they evicted tenants that were in those homes. And so we had this really challenging situation where our economy actually stayed really strong during the pandemic, and people were trying to hire staff. But in terms of the professionals that they needed, people couldn't get into any kind of housing to actually take on those roles. So we have a whole bunch of job vacancies in well-paid, high-level positions that can't be filled because people don't have anywhere to live. And so one of the knock-on effects is having the professionals who are here getting really overworked because they can't actually, they don't have that pressure relief valve of being able to bring in new staff. And so there's a fairly difficult situation arising here when it comes to like accountants, for instance, where there's a whole bunch of positions posted and no one can fill them, at least locally. So a lot of that's going to have to get farmed out to other centers.
Yeah, so some different things. The work from home aspect, at first you thought, oh, how's that even possible? And then it turns out to be not a bad thing maybe. And Moose Jaw is going to the extent of going to be promoting our city as a city of, you can work from anywhere. Why not live in Moose Jaw and work and do your work? But in some of the effects around immigration, and that's solving a lot of our labor needs, and that more or less came to a screeching halt. Our South Polytech educational institution here depends on immigrant students, and lots of them. And so, they're not coming in. So it affected the college, it affected, our ability to, fill positions that are required in the community. So housing's always an issue. And so I don't know that the COVID did much around that, because we're always trying to improve our housing, and it's always kind of something that we're working on.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you to look into your imaginary crystal ball right now and to predict. I love Paul's suggestion in the chat, live in Moose Jaw, work in Nelson. So, and that's actually what I was thinking when you said that. I thought, well, okay, so, accountants, that could be online, right? Like, so we're making connections here. We're solving everyone's problem. Okay, that's a side effect of it. Us. Okay, hey, there you go, making connections here. Okay, back to your imaginary crystal ball, if you had one. And I wanted to pick up something you said, Jim, about the think tank just kind of being in the moment response, leading to surprising other things coming out of it that weren't expected or predicted, but that are an excellent opportunity and something you're going to pursue going forward. I mean, I think what I'm asking here is what things you think what sort of trends that were set in motion by the pandemic do you think will continue and go forward? And how is that affecting, that's the first question. The second question is, how is that affecting your planning and economic development, your like sort of 5-year plan? If, I don't know if you have one of those, everybody kind of has that in the back of their mind, sort of 1 year, 5 year, like how are you thinking this is going to change things? How is it not going to change things? Like, okay, we're just going to go, we're just, that was nice, but we're not going to go back to that. So do a little prediction here. I'm not going to hold you to this. I'm not going to bring this out in 5 years and say, well, you said, this was going to stick around, and here we are. So
yeah,
Paul, go ahead.
Well, Paul, you're first. Go ahead there.
I think the ability to deliver services remotely, that's here to stay. We look at our own office, and anyone who lives more than a 15-minute drive from work is interested in working from home, at least a couple days a week, and we're set up for that now. So I think that's here to stay. The flexible in-office workspaces that triggers is obviously here to stay. So we're looking at reconfiguring our office with some flexible docking stations. You have to be here over a certain number of days per week in order to have your own office. So I think that's going to be pretty common across some workplaces. The home delivery piece, so the retailers' ability to deliver to consumers, that platform's there, why not use it? We've had a whole bunch of little courier companies start up as a result of that. So I think that type of work is going to continue. BC just announced home delivery for cannabis from a retailer that people order from. So that's going to be big in Nelson, as you can imagine. And then I think we're about to see a massive tourism boom. People have that desire to move around. Nelson's obviously a big destination, so we're kind of just idling these big engines, getting ready to go. And it's kind of exciting because we have the capacity. We know there's going to be demand, and so that's one of the exciting things on the horizon for us.
Yeah, much of the same thing. For sure, the online, selling, traditional bricks and mortar maybe weren't embracing that the way they had to, and so it helped them realize there's opportunity there. So I think really that's continue to grow, and some of the folks that didn't think that was an option now realize it is an option, and with the support that they got from training and things. The collaboration, I think, is going to continue. Like, we're still meeting once a week now with the think tank, and because there's still value there. We still get upwards of 12 to 20 people on a call because there's still things happening, but it's also been an excellent forum for businesses to talk about opportunities and be creative. And so I really think that is going to continue. From an economic developer's perspective, business retention expansion is a critical tool. Well, this has been all about that think tank, because we've got full engagement with the business community and identifying some of their needs, maybe some of the barriers to growth. And so, I hope that continues, because that's been very valuable, for communities that don't have a lot of resources and don't have a program around BRE or other opportunities that now you can do online. I mean, that's good. It's been good. And so I think smaller communities that are under-resourced will benefit from these kinds of initiatives. And really just stand the partnerships that we've created, working stronger with Tourism Moose Jaw, Chamber of Commerce, City of Moose Jaw, oftentimes not viewed as a partner when we are very much a partner and partnering with our business community. So
I'm going to spring one more question on you, Jim. So I didn't send you this beforehand, but surprise. So the last question is, you had mentioned, and I put this in the title about remote workers because I just felt like we were coming back to that again and again, that people are going to work remotely. And, so what does that look like for Moose Jaw? How are you planning and preparing for attracting remote workers?
Well, we're just going through our updated relocation guide. And so that's really a tool that we'll use for recruiting, not only for the business but also the families that come with the people that work at these operations, and then even by chance people coming through and picking up one of the relocations guides at one of the tourism center or hotel when they're staying over, and really identifying the quality of life here. You can work from anywhere, right? Why wouldn't you want to live in a community that's safe and, close to 35, 40 minutes from an international airport, so you can really get anywhere you need to get to in short order. So, I think we're going to be doing a lot more of that kind of target marketing in terms of the kinds of people that could locate here and live here and work here from a distance. So.
Did you want to add anything to that, Paul? I want to give you a chance to, if you want.
Yeah, nothing too much to add. I think one of the things that we recognized is just the frailty of our transportation systems. Like we had a couple of local bus charters that, they couldn't handle the change in traffic. And so everything kind of just ground to a halt. And what you're saying about an international airport, you've got an ability there to keep people moving, where here our airport essentially shut down. Air Canada pulled out. We had a small charter that stepped up for a little while in the intervening period, and then Air Canada came back. But it was a real disruption, and something that we need to look at planning for in the future, because that was an interesting one for us.
Okay, so we have about a minute left of the panel. So what I'm gonna say is, if anyone has a question now, throw it in the chat. We can also ask questions when we reconvene after the next discussion time, because that's where we're going next. So if anyone did have a question, they can pop it in the chat right now. You can also reach out later. Again, I didn't prepare you for this, but the point of this is to make connections, right? So Paul and Jim, are you okay with getting emails from people directly afterwards about the things that you talked about, or if people wanted to know more about what you're doing or how they could incorporate that into their planning? They're both nodding. They're up for it. Okay, very cool. So if you don't have a question right now, but if something comes out later that they mentioned and you're thinking you would really like to know more about, or you're thinking, oh, actually, we should be planning for that, or if you're planning the same kind of way, then okay, so very cool. I see Tina posted in the chat here about Maple Creek's chamber has an ambitious remote worker plan. What the thing I noticed about Maple Creek is whenever they do the weather report in Saskatchewan, Maple Creek is like almost always the hotspot. Almost always. It's just like, yep, thumbs up. I don't know. It's just. So Maple Creek, the warm spot of Saskatchewan, a very cool province. Okay, so if no one has any questions, I just want to thank Paul and Jim. Thanks so much for sharing with us in our panel. I see they both put their emails in the chat there, so thanks so much. Thank you for those insights. I see some thumbs up coming from the rest of the group here, so really